Often they find out later in life that this is something that's going on with their brains. And once they realize that, they want to get some support to figure out how they can navigate their relationships better and the workplace environment better. I started this business after almost 20 years of being a special education teacher. I primarily specialized in working with high school students who had ADHD and autism or both. And once it was time to leave public education, I realized that there are all these adults who are finding this out about the way that their brain works. I also have some younger clients who got through the school system and wasn't recognized that this is what's going on with their brains. And so now all of a sudden it has come to light and they and their families want some support. So thanks for having me. Welcome to the Test Kitchen podcast.
Welcome, Jeannie. Jeannie Love. That's an amazing name. I
Thank
must
you.
say. I feel like people instantly probably trust you faster when you introduce yourself.
I hope
How could
so.
you not like somebody named Jeannie Love?
Oh,
So,
thank you. Me too.
so before we dive into this, I have a few icebreaker questions for you. Um, if someone said, "I will give you $100 million to sing a song word for word," what song would that be?
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm gonna tell you a secret here. Here's the thing. I don't know the lyrics to any songs. I don't know what it is about my brain, but I will tell myself I am going to listen to the song and I'm going to listen to it all the way through. And I don't have ADHD. I don't think I definitely have some ADHD characteristics, but my brain wanders off in the middle of a song. And so I actually would probably lose that unless you wanted me to sing some nursery rhymes for kids. I could do that. I could do nursery rhymes. But when it comes to music, I'm more into like jazz and jam bands and things like that where I can get really lost in the musicians because I lose track of lyrics. There you go. It's a big secret that you just brought out about me. First thing.
That's you kind of answered my next icebreaker question, but a song with no words, that's kind of a hack to getting the $100 million. Because I feel like if they say sing a song word for word, you give a song with no words.
I'll dance. I'll dance as long as you want to play the music. I'll dance. But yeah, I would prefer a song with no words.
So yeah, that answers actually the next question I was gonna ask. What's the one thing you've never said out loud, or something that most people don't know about you?
And it's so funny that you asked that because I would never have come up with that on my own. So I'm going to hold on to that the next time there's like a party game and people want to know your biggest secret. That's mine.
Now you have it. Don't know song lyrics. If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who is sitting at the table?
Do they have to be alive?
No, you can use a Ouija board, I guess.
I think I would bring my grandparents back just because, I mean, I was lucky to have them for a lot of years, but I wasn't smart enough to ask them questions. And so I would love to know more. My grandmother just recently passed and she was 101. And so I got a lot more of her about what life was like when she was young and raising kids and living through the depression. You know, they were very poor farmers. Um, and so I would love to bring them back and ask them a lot more questions about their life and what that was like.
Hmm. Okay. That's the first actually. Grandparents. Do you think you could ask your parents the same questions and get it from them, or no? You have to get it from the source.
I'd love to get it from the source. I could
Yeah.
hear my parents' interpretation of it and definitely get their version of the story, but I have snippets of what it was like when my grandparents were young, but I would just love to go back and ask so much more.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Last one. What is your favorite book, song, or movie? Pick one.
I'll go with my favorite book. It's the one that I come back to over and over again, which is The Alchemist. Are you familiar with The
Actually,
Alchemist?
that's one of my top books. One of my top favorites.
It's like I started this business later in life, and it's like I feel like I'm now discovering my personal legend, and starting a business is not easy. It's like the coaching work, that's natural to me, but now I have to learn how to like run a business, and it's not simple at all. And so I feel like, you know, me growing this coaching business, getting the word out about what I'm doing, speaking is not something I've ever been comfortable with. I've always been kind of
Yeah.
shy and afraid to use my voice. And so I feel like all of that, I remind myself that I'm now on my new personal journey, my new personal legend, and I'll read it several times a year when
Oh
you know,
wow.
whenever I want to come back to that.
We probably have a similar book library then. That was the first book that I sat down and I read without getting up, like cover to cover. I just sat down a Saturday morning, and I didn't intend that I would finish the book at the same time I started reading it, but I just couldn't put it down. And then I looked up and it was evening and I was done with the book.
How old were
Yeah.
you when you did that?
Oh, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Okay, okay. I'd like my daughter to read it, but I think she's still a little bit young. But
How old is your
I
daughter?
mean, I highlight, she's only 13, so I think maybe when she gets a little closer to high school. But it's like I sit down to read it again, and there's the highlighter comes out again, and there's just always some new little tidbit of information that I needed to hear at this
Mm,
time that I
right.
highlight. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good book. Yeah, the only other book that I've read multiple times. I haven't read The Alchemist multiple times, but maybe I should bring it back. But I do the same thing with. There's a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and I've read that book 5 times now. I try to read it every year.
Okay. What's that book about?
It sounds religious, but it's actually not. The whole theme of it is being decisive, determined, and within every failure is the seed of success. If I had to sum up the entire book.
Beautiful. I love it. That's great. I'm gonna look it up right after we get off this conversation.
So, you are an ADHD coach who doesn't have ADHD. You're actually the second one now that I've interviewed. I didn't even know that you guys existed because in my mind, I think who would want to spend their time with us? Most people they don't they want to get away from us after a 30-minute conversation, but you guys made a career out of it. But when someone walks into your program for the first time, what do they think they're there for versus what are they actually there for?
I think that people come to me because of executive functioning. So it's like they want to do better with their time management, with getting started on tasks, meeting their goals. Like, and that's kind of a typical ADHD thing is you might have something in mind that you're working toward, but it's really hard to get started on it and maintain momentum. So that's maybe why they come to me for coaching. And then we do that, but within that, then there are also some other things that come up, like communication styles. Um, Often that's why a lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD. They've kind of created their own thing, whether it's because they have really brilliant ideas, which they do, or also because the traditional workplace doesn't work for them. Emotional regulation is something that's getting a little bit more attention now for ADHD. And so then I sort of have a little curriculum that I lead them through that helps them to better connect with what's going on with their nervous system when they're escalated, what that looks like, and then we develop some strategies to kind of help come back down to a more stable state. And then, you know, just coming to terms with the fact that you've had this in your entire life and things maybe haven't been easy and you might be kind of hard on yourself because school has been hard and your parents, there were probably some issues you had with them. And so, how can we come to terms with you're okay? We're going to build a system that works for you because you've tried all the other systems that everybody said was going to work and they didn't. So, now we're going to build one for you. So, some of that sort of acceptance of what's going on and some healing of what's going on in your brain.
I think that's a big point where you said like people come in for one thing and um, but they end up getting something else where you actually build a system for them. But what does that actually look like? Because like I've done ADHD coaching before, and what I thought was going to happen was someone was going to show me how to pretty much use the calendar. And what actually happened, I mean, there was some of that in there as well, but a huge portion of it was the EIQ piece, which I had no clue that that was even a factor. Like I downloaded an app called How You Feel, and they asked me to track my feelings when certain things happen, and it kind of gave me a different insight on how to deal with it. Um, is that kind of what you see often, like when you're building a system, or what other things along with that are there that's like different from what people normally expect, especially someone who's doing it for the first time and just now finding out that they want to try coaching?
Um, yeah, well, each individual comes in with a different story, different priorities. A lot of times it's around work. Um, but then also I get women who are in midlife, and so often they're going back to school for a career change of some kind,
Mm,
and they're raising kids, and this is like putting a spike on their ADHD. Perimenopause plays into this. And so they're all coming to me. And so it just really depends on what their priority is. And so I had a client who was navigating all of this while going through a divorce. And so she had like three calendars on the wall. And that was working for her. We figured out how to make that work for her so that she could see all the different aspects of her day. I have another client who was in an MBA program and going on an international trip, and this was really stressing her out. And so we did a lot of the emotional regulation stuff. Um, I have one client who we just need to sit down together, and she needs to plan out her week, time block. Like, these are the things that I have going on, and here's where it's going to fit in the calendar. And so it's very specific to what they're doing, but then those other pieces still kind of filter in, and, how to get started on a task, how to transition between tasks, how to close out a task at the end of the day, how to close all your tabs literally on your screen, but then also in your brain, like all those things.
I see. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people with ADHD now, and it's kind of interesting how different we're the same, but we're also very different. And the way that we solve it is also it looks different in every single person. Like what works for one person does not work for the other person. The only thing
Yep.
is that they need something to manage this. Maybe the symptom is the same, but like the outcome is different.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. So they'll come in, they'll say that they have something, like an issue that they want to work through. I'll offer a suggestion. They'll push back. They'll say, well, I don't know that this is going to work for this reason. So then we sort of modify it to make it work for them. They leave, they try it out, they come back, they say, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. Okay, let's continue to refine. And we do that. Working with me is like at the beginning is a 12-week commitment. And so we just continue to refine and refine and refine until you kind of leave with a toolkit that's for you.
Mm,
Because again, your priorities, the way your brain works, your life, totally different from everybody else. And so it needs a little bit of customization.
I see. And kind of along with that, you said something the last time I talked to you that I never thought about, but you touched on helping people come to terms with their past.
Yeah.
Um, how does that actually play a role in it all?
I think people who, and I see this happening with my daughter who has ADHD, you get so much negative feedback consistently because she can't do school the way everybody else is doing school. And so for her it's just like, I mean, we're going through it right now. It's just like all of the things characteristics of ADHD are making it so that it's hard for her to like get her stuff done at school, and then she really doesn't focus after school, and so she's constantly behind, and then transitioning between sports and homework and all this stuff. And so it's like negative feedback constantly just building up. And there's this like rejection sensitivity that people are starting to talk about more. I'm not sure that they really know where it comes from. There's a conversation about like, is this just part of the way your brain works with ADHD, or is it a buildup of negative feedback over a lifetime? And so, regardless, it's like everything they've tried that everybody told you to do, your parents told you to do it this way, your teachers told you to do it this way, and it didn't work. And so now you've got this, like, lifetime of nothing works for me. And that doesn't feel good. And so it's a little bit more of an acceptance of like, and a grieving for not really understanding what was going on with your brain. And so we just kind of call that out. It's not therapy that I do, but it's just more of like, let's acknowledge it and bring it more to the forefront of our consciousness and out of the emotional part of our brain, and be okay with that and grieve it and be sad, and then now we have some steps forward that we can take.
You mentioned a word that I actually heard for the first time. I think it was last year. Rejection sensitivity. I had never even knew that was a thing. I do know my whole life I had this internal belief like, why is everyone out to get me? Like sometimes I would feel that way. And later I realized, like, no, everyone's not out to get you. I'm just kind of making it up because they've done, like, this person has done things to show that they're not. But still, I would have, that's what I labeled it in my mind. And eventually, I learned how to kind of make my own solution for it and just realize when it was happening and versus when it was real and fake in my head. And I just thought it was me. And then I step into this world, and then I hear this term rejection sensitivity, and then I'm like, oh, so that's actually a thing. Like, what exactly is like? Can you explain more on that?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is you're just a little bit more sensitive. I'm going to attribute it to the negative feedback that you've gotten throughout your lifetime. And so it's like when somebody comes to you with a suggestion, or even just like wants to meet with you, something in the workplace specifically. So if a supervisor comes up and it's like, hey, can we chat for a couple of minutes, your nervous system is automatically going to go into sort of a fight or flight
Mm,
or freeze kind of mode, because you're already on edge. Like, well, what's that about? And I've heard people post it on Instagram or whatever, that it's like, oh, that's it, I'm gonna get fired, even though they know that it's not likely, because they're good at what they do and they're not in any trouble. But that just being called out just immediately puts you on edge. And so I'm glad that it's becoming a little bit more common knowledge, because it's real. People experience it. Um, I saw like another podcaster, he was talking about, one of his interviewees had to cancel at the last minute, and he was just in a complete meltdown, even though he knew it had nothing to do with him.
I
Things
think I
come
saw
up.
that post. I think we saw the same post. It was on LinkedIn. I
Yeah,
forgot his name.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, this is real. This is what you feel, and so the best thing that you can do is this sort of mindfulness that I teach with to my clients, more of a presentness, more of an acknowledgement of, yes, I am probably overreacting, and I'm not going to be hard on myself about it. So there's the not judgment part of the mindfulness. Just know that this is what's going on. Okay, I am feeling big about this, situation that I'm in. I'm probably overreacting. And once you do that, it kind of quiets it down a little bit. But just be okay with it. It's part of what's going on inside of you. And each time you acknowledge that and you're gentle with yourself about it, it's going to get a little quieter and a little quieter and a little quieter.
I see. I wish I had met you a long time ago before I had to figure it out on my own. But I think that mindfulness is a big thing because I wasn't able to figure it out for myself until I started doing yoga and meditation. And then I don't know, from there something just clicked in my mind of like, wait a minute, maybe that's not a thing. And so I kind of was able to reverse engineer the solution for myself, but I never even considered that that was a thing and that there were ways to actually like at least minimize it as much as you can. Is that the only solution you give to people, or are there any other tips for that? Because apparently it's big. I didn't know how bad it was until, and now I follow more people in the ADHD world, and I see them post about it. I'm like, wow, like mine is not that bad, but I've seen some pretty. I think I forgot his name, but he wrote a book called Everyone Hates Me. I think you've seen him on LinkedIn before.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm not quite sure about that book, but yeah, I think it's like you can't suppress it. You can't get mad at yourself about it. We know that none of that works. So the very best thing that you can do is get friendly with it and just, you know, okay, there you are. I see you. And by I see you, I mean I see you, rejection sensitivity. I understand that I am responding in a way that's probably a little extra big. Okay. And once you've done that, you've moved out of the emotional part of your brain, you're more in the rational part of your brain, and you have just a little bit more control over how you react and how you respond. And so for me, that's the best way that I have found. And you do it over and over and over every time it pops up without getting mad at yourself, because this is just what's happening. And that's it. Become friendly with it, make friends with it.
Right, right.
That's what I have found works.
Okay. This sounds a little bit like therapy, but me personally, I know just from my experience that coaching and therapy is different. But what are the differences between therapy and coaching?
Therapy will go even deeper into your past. And so then you can really work on some of the deeper issues. Mine is like when I help people, it's just sort of a superficial, like, let's become friends with this feeling. Or when I'm helping with emotional regulation, it's a little more like that same sort of like conscious understanding of just like kind of how I'm feeling, but it's not going to heal your past wounds. It's just going to allow you to move forward. So to quiet it a little bit so that we can move forward. And so that's, I think, the difference between coaching and therapy is that I can't necessarily help you heal that, but what I can do is bring it to the forefront so that you can acknowledge it, quiet the feeling, and then move forward, which is really what coaching is about. Like, we're here. What are we going to do to move forward? So, does that help you to see the difference? In
Yeah, it does. I do know there's a bit of a gray area where you kind of touch some of the
yes,
same some of the
yes.
same things. But I had one coach, and on her group call, she would say, "Okay, now I'm stepping into therapy territory, so let me back off," and that kind of helped me see the difference. Anyway,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's just sort of this point where it's like if they want to discuss even deeper about why that is the way it is and the trauma that you experienced or things like that, and then you have moved into therapy, and I'll step away and say that this is out of my realm of expertise.
I see. How did you get into all of this? What was your, I guess, career journey like?
Well, the career journey, I mean, I'll it's winding, but after college, I went to school to become a physical therapist, but I ended up in this ski area in Colorado, and just decided that physical therapy wasn't my route. Was sort of just trying to figure out who I am, and I ended up teaching at a school on a whim. It just was one of those things I fell into. Uh, Teaching special education, I was working with students who needed a lot of support to be able to navigate school. So I did that for a few years, and then I just became a special education teacher. And then from there, I moved to working with a different group of kids who needed a little less support to navigate the school life. Um, and so that's when I kind of got really good with ADHD and autism. I
Hmm.
had the opportunity to live in South America and teach there for 5 years. That was really cool. And then when I came back, it was sort of that midlife kind of thing. It was COVID, great time for reflection. Like, what am I going to do? My daughter was struggling at the time. And so I just took a little break from teaching and discovered that there are so many adults who are finding out they have ADHD or autism. And I realized that a lot of my students are now in their 30s and they still have ADHD, they still have autism, and the workplace doesn't really know about their brains like the school does. So I started consulting, working with organizations to understand neurodiversity. I started coaching clients who have ADHD and autism, finding my path in the business world. I still do a little bit of both, but primarily coaching is the thing that I love doing. I love working with people and helping them meet their goals. I love learning about their lives, their challenges, their goals, and brainstorming solutions and coming up with their plan. I love all of that.
Hmm. You said that you were in South America in Chile. Um, what was that like from like a cultural standpoint? Um, because I asked that because I have heard that, like, for example, certain languages, apparently, like people who know like certain languages, they may be better at math because this language communicates the numbers in a way that is easier to like do the calculations. But cultural, and then there's all sorts of other cultural things. But when it comes to like ADHD, is there a difference in how people perceive it there versus here in America and like getting diagnosed?
I would have to say I don't know that I can really speak to that because I was working for a little school that was primarily for expats from the United States.
Mm,
So it was a very like American style program, traditional to what we our kids would go through here. It was, inside of a Chilean or a Peruvian school, but I just didn't have as much access to what was going on in those schools. So I'm not really sure that I can respond to your question about how they see ADHD or how they evaluate for that. I'm just not, I don't feel like I can really answer that well.
right, right. I see you were still kind of working with Americans, so there was, I guess,
I
not
was.
not too much of a difference on that part. And you work with couples as well, though, or do you?
Um,
I thought I read that somewhere.
I have worked with couples, but I will help people who are struggling in their relationships to
Hmm.
communicate better. So this might come up more in autism. And so I do have some clients who want to improve how they communicate. And so we will create some scripts and talk through some situations in that case. But I haven't worked with couples. Yeah, it's just more of like, I can be a better partner. This is what my partner is telling me.
Hmm.
I can do better. How can I help meet them where they are? And then also, I'll help them explain. I'll teach them how to explain to their partner about how their brain works.
Mm,
So that's the sort of couples work that I've done in the past, is really more with the individual
I
getting the
see.
coaching.
That can be helpful too because I mean, dealing with someone who doesn't, either the other way, like you're ADHD and they don't know about it, or vice versa. And I can just imagine if someone's undiagnosed, then it's probably a whole world of, of chaos. But are there any common threads that you see that people um, or solutions or like things to do to make sure their partner or I don't know family member, whoever it is, um, they can work together better?
So the emotional regulation stuff that I do with my clients, they'll share it with their partner and then they're communicating better about what's going on between both of them. So that carries across the family. They'll teach it to their kids. partners are happy when they're getting stuff done on the list. And so, whatever like the strategy is to kind of help you get your stuff done at work, they'll carry that over to home and use that same system, which is a better communication tool. And then, being able to understand what's going on in your brain and explain that to other people, that looks different for everybody because their experiences are different, but yet being able to put words to it and explain it to other people, that is something that is common.
Mm.
So yeah, usually what happens is I think people usually often come to me with work related issues and then they take those strategies and they bring them home and then everybody's getting along better at home, which is cool.
Which is great. What okay, what would you recommend somebody say? Say you're dating someone and they haven't like, explored how to work together because one has ADHD. For the person that does have ADHD, what would you tell them to say to the other person? Or maybe say or do.
I was just earlier today doing a presentation for a company on neurodiversity at work, and someone had asked me a very similar question about just starting to explain how their brain works at work. And I think it's the same, which is just start saying those things out loud. Like, this is kind of hard for me. This is what's really going on in this kind of situation. And and start saying that to people who feel comfortable, family, friends, even just out loud to yourself. Start seeing if you can put words to what's really going on, and then it's easier to just own it and explain it. That for me, it's like all the ideas are spinning around in my head. This is maybe kind of the part where I do relate a little bit to ADHD, is it can be a lot that's going on in my head and I can't see the pieces all coming together. And so it feels overwhelming to me. And then, but what I do is I just kind of need to stop and get away and get it all out of my head. And then I can kind of start seeing the patterns. Or if you want me to organize some kind of an event or something like that, I miss details. Like, I do not see all of the details. So if we're going to partner up on something, it would be helpful to me if you could help make sure that I'm not missing the details. And so, I don't know, just become friendly with your challenges, become okay with them, own them, and start speaking about them openly, is what I would
I see.
suggest.
I see. Don't think it, say it. I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, start to communicate about it.
Hmm. That's I'll have to try that because I didn't
Yeah.
realize that myself. It's like sometimes if you have ADHD, you have like these thoughts in your head, and it's like you forget to say them out loud sometimes. And it's like just say it out loud.
It's true. I have totally been caught like I'll be all the way through an entire thought process and I'll bring my husband at the end and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's like, oh, none of that was out loud. That was all in my head and probably has been going on for days before I brought him in on it. And it's like, okay, now I understand that. Now I can communicate that to him. And now I can know when I'm doing it and be like, oh, right, sorry, I forgot I brought you all the way in on the end of that. Let me get you caught
Hmm.
up on where my brain's been.
Mm. Are you sure you're not ADHD too?
Well,
You know.
I'm not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if. Here's the thing. I have been working on this stuff since high school.
Hmm.
I remember when I was in college and I would go to the deepest, darkest hole of the library, and then I would sit at one of those desks that had the walls. And so it was like dark, and there was nobody down there, and the desks had the walls, and only then could I like do the hard studying. And so it's like I've just built up these coping mechanisms throughout my life, but there's definitely part of me that's like, I align with a lot of ADHD.
But I get that a lot from people who don't have it, because everyone has these symptoms. Like I think the difference is maybe the degree of which it impacts you.
Yes,
But
that's correct.
what is the line between how does somebody know that hey maybe I should go get a formal diagnosis or maybe I should look into this versus I'm a regular person and this is something that just happens to everyone.
Or, maybe I don't know. It's like if you think it is impacting you to such a degree that you are having a hard time navigating regular daily life, then it's probably time to go get an evaluation. So if it's impacting you at home and you're just like, I cannot get it all done, and this is where my women who are in this midlife transition, all of a sudden it's like going back to school and all the pressures of that while the kid and the job and the divorce, and if all of that is going on, you might need some medication where maybe you didn't before.
Mm,
So so I just think it's like a spectrum, like so many things. But if you are struggling to get your stuff done, it might be worth an evaluation. I think I was talking to someone who is autistic or thinks they're autistic. And I was like, well, I know someone who could give you an evaluation. And they're like, but I'm doing okay. And it's like, yeah, so maybe you don't need that. Like, what is a
mm,
diagnosis going to do for you? So
mhm.
maybe think about like, what are your goals? And if you're really having a difficult time getting to them, then seek, some therapy, some coaching, some medication, some dietary changes you can make. Like, find out what's available to you and what most aligns with your
Mm,
personal beliefs and preferences.
I see. Now I have like three questions from that that
Okay.
last sentence you said. Wait, let me think. Which one should I ask first? Uh, what is your take on medication?
My take on medication is it can help. You should explore it. You should. I mean, I think it is all part. I think what, the researchers and doctors are recommending is, it's a if you put all these things together, you can have some success. So perhaps medication, definitely diet, perhaps some coaching, some therapy, some supplements, like all of those things. Work with a doctor to kind of figure out what balance of those is going to help you live your best life. So I'm in support of medication
Mm,
if
I see.
if that's helpful to you.
Yeah, it sounds like baking a cake almost. Like taking this recipe and this and then finding the right combination that works for you at least.
It can take time to
Yeah.
figure all that out.
Yes, for sure. I've spent over 10 years trying to bake my own cake and it's finally starting to come together, but it took a lot of just this and that and the exercise and the meditation and creatine supplements and maybe some medication on some days and maybe not. I played with every combination and it's kind of weird too because it changes over time. Like what worked, when I was 17 does not work now. So
Yes.
that's another thing that I'm finding.
Yeah, and your life has gotten a little more complicated since you were 17 and your brain has changed and then, yeah, exactly. It just but you have all the healthy parts coming together. And so I think as long as you're doing all the healthy parts, then, medication can't fix everything, but it can be part of the whole package of the whole toolkit
Right,
to support you.
right. What's your take on group coaching? And do you do coaching or just focus on one-on-one coaching?
I'm not opposed to group coaching. I don't do it purely for the reason people come to me and they want individual coaching. So I don't know. I don't know. I've tried putting together groups, but I like working with the individual because then we're really focused on them. However, I can see the benefit of a group as far as, forming a community. Um, I'll give you an example. Is I often thought that it would be great to have a mom group whose
Mm,
kids have ADHD because this is a really hard job. And there's not a lot of people who can relate to that experience of raising an ADHD kid. And so I think that, finding a community can be really helpful. So, in that way, I can see the benefits of group coaching.
I see. And you work with both people who have ADHD and autism. Is that correct?
Yes.
How does somebody know like if they have, or I guess what is the difference between ADHD and autism? Because I feel like even myself, I'm a little bit unclear on where the line is. I know the extremes, but I don't know like the gray area middle.
Um, so I definitely am not, somebody who can diagnose people, but there is some overlap with ADHD and autism. The executive functioning can be a challenge for both, the emotional regulation can be a challenge for both, but I think where you get more into autism is the interpretation of like social environment.
Mm,
So being able to navigate our neurotypical, so your sort of typical social world, because they're a little more concrete, a little more direct. It's harder to pick up on social nuances and subtleties, things like that. So I think that's maybe where you would start to see autism. They can be hyper focused. Like hyper focus can happen with both ADHD and autism. In autism, it's like it can be more intense on a very specific sort of passion that they have, and so they'll take it, much much further. So that extreme focus on a very niche passion can be part of autism. What I have found from my experience is that people who come to me have done the research, and you can take online
okay.
tests, and there's even like real valid researched tests that are available to take online. And they just kind of check the boxes, and then they come to me and they're like, I think, I've checked all the boxes. And again, I'm not someone who can diagnose people, but I've spent a lot of years with people who are autistic, and they're usually right, in my opinion. And so, if you are curious about it, there's plenty of information online for you to better understand what it is, and then, take a couple of inventories to find out if that sounds like you.
I see. Do this is kind of a random question, but do ADHD people and autistic people tend to get along, or do they tend to not get along? I've seen memes online that support both, but they're just memes. But I just always wonder, like, is that a thing?
I really have I don't know about that. I guess it
It's
just
just
depends
a
on the
random, yeah,
openness of the people to be around people who see the world differently. So, yeah, I'm not really sure, but I
right.
guess yeah, I can't really, I don't know that I necessarily have any
Yeah.
examples of that.
'Cause I have noticed that people who have ADHD tend to, or at least in my experience, I've seen they tend to get along very well because they can we can like interrupt each other, and neither one like you don't get offended by it, and you can have like a five-threaded conversation happening in one conversation. So I've kind of noticed that, and I wonder if it's something similar with people who have autism or not. Um, but on a more serious question, what is there anything that we kind of haven't touched on that people should know about? Like we touched on the EIQ and the rejection sensitivity, but is there anything else that people or a lot of us don't know that maybe we should be aware of?
Um, I would say, we didn't really talk too much about executive functioning. I think people are a little bit more aware of that, but for, someone who is just learning about ADHD, it really is incredibly hard for them to just get started on a task. Like an unbelievable amount of effort to get started on a task that is not enjoyable. Most of us can just sit down and be like, "Oh, okay, I'll do it," and you just kind of get to it. But it's monumental for people who have ADHD. Then if they're interrupted, so switching tasks can be really difficult. Keeping that long term goal in mind and like sticking with it. Like these are really hard. And we have a tendency right now for everybody to be like, oh, we're all a little bit ADHD. And we are all a little bit more distracted than we probably previously were, but we are definitely not all a little bit ADHD because, I mean, this is a significant impact to their life and, meeting their goals. And so, maybe what I would suggest is, along with you being a little more gracious and giving yourself a little more grace for, where your challenges are, also the same thing for people who care about someone who has ADHD. Just because they're on for some things doesn't mean that they're going to be on for all things, and doesn't mean that they're going to be on consistently all the time. Like their brains are just up and down. And if you can be okay with that and understand that that's really what is going on, um, you know, I guess I want to say, that would be super helpful.
Right. Yeah, that is a big one as well. Across like all of your clients, if you had to just pick one of like the most effective techniques for managing this executive function, I know everyone is different, but if there was like one like powerful one or like one shot one that you would just give to anyone, what would that be?
Um, I think I have this strategy that I teach that I call do the thing or do nothing. So I would probably put it as a two-phase thing. One would be time block your day and make those time blocks like an hour and a half. So not 30 minutes, but an hour and a half. And then put, of course, the hard things in a time block where you've got a little more mental energy. And when you get to that and you don't want to do it, you do the thing or do nothing. And so that is like get yourself all set up, make sure that you've got your water and all the tools that you need. You've gotten rid of all the other tabs. Your phone is out of reach. You've got everything set up to do this hard thing. And then you just wait. And you can't do anything else. You can't read. You can't stare out the window. You can't meditate. You can't do anything. You just do the thing or do nothing. And both of those are wins. Because when you're doing nothing, we need to do more of that. So just literally nothing. Like let your brain rest, let your mind wander. Just do nothing. That's really good for you, and we need to do it more. So you're winning if you're doing nothing. And then eventually, some sort of spark of motivation will come inside of you, and you'll get started on the thing. But you just have to
Mhm.
outlast the resistance to doing the thing. And so that's it. Set yourself up with a big time block to do this hard thing. I was coaching a friend the other day who had two hard emails to write. That's it. It's like 10 minutes of work. And I was like, set aside an hour and a half. Put it in your time block and be like, I mean, maybe it'll take you no time. Awesome. Maybe it'll take you a whole hour and a half. But it's a hard thing. Set aside the time block. She said she did the thing or did not do nothing, and it worked. So,
I would have never thought of that. So literally for the whole 1 hour and a half, you only allowed to do two things for that time block. And it's either do
well,
it or nothing. Oh,
yeah. And then when she finished, so let's say it took a half an hour.
yeah,
Then when
15 minutes.
she finished, it's like, all right, now you can move on to some easier things. Don't do another hard thing, but check a few easy things off your list. But just like, and celebrate. Be like, that was hard, and I did it. And now I'm gonna like, do a couple of easy things. But yeah, if it's hard for you, set aside a whole time block and be like, okay, I'll wait until I'm ready to do it.
Right. Okay. I kind of like that. It kind of feels uh like it's relieving pressure because either I do it or I do nothing, and so I get to do nothing. So that's kind of cool. Um, if you had your top 1 to 5 principles to life just written on a board to look at every day, and it can be one, it can be 10, or however many you have, what would be on that board?
Um, so I think for me it would be one, and I would say build the life that you want. And I think that I'm just learning that now in my mid 40s, because when I started this business, it was like, okay, I don't think that teaching is going to get for me what I need to be the best mother. They're not paid well, so financially stable, like all these things. And my parents are aging, so flexibility to be where I want. And so I sat down and just kind of like thought about all those things, like, what do I want? And I had a couple of career options. I had a couple of interviews, and I was like, what am I going to do with the second half of my career? And it's like steer towards what you want from your life, what you want your life to look like. And then the path, kind of winds, and you have, I don't know, things come up. And if you just constantly are steering towards, there's this life coach, her name is Martha Beck, and she talks about following the path of yes. And it's just constantly like steering your decisions towards what's going to get me closer to that. And if I can keep that sort of vision in mind of what I think I'm building from my life, then it's all gonna go in the correct direction. I think that I was raised, you figure out what you want to do for your career, and then you go to college, and that's the path forward. For me, that didn't work out. That wasn't actually what I wanted. And so this is looking at it a little bit differently, which is like, what do I want from my life? And then when opportunities or choices come up, I can steer myself toward that. So the
Mm,
principle is like, build the life you want, follow the path of yes. And then there are a lot of different ways to get there. Never in my wildest dream did I think I was going to have my own business. That was not on my list. But I saw what I wanted to have from my life, and this was the way to get there. So I just went for it.
right. Yeah, it's funny how that works. You said never in your wildest dreams would you have thought you'd be doing this today, and I kind of feel that it's weird the path or journey that you get taken on when you start navigating towards that North Star and kind of away from the star that people told you that you should, the traditional star that you're supposed to do. And you find yourself in a place that you never thought, but it feels nicer. I would say.
Yeah, it's not without its challenges, but yet it feels good. It feels right. It feels like I'm building, the best thing for me, and that's cool. I'm not, yeah, I'm doing what feels right for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, we're at time. I have about 50 more questions that I want to ask you, but we don't have time for it. But thank you, Jeannie, for just coming on this podcast. Jeannie Love. I like saying your whole name. Like it's
Oh, thank
but
you.
where can people find you? The links, all of the plugs.
I'm on LinkedIn, and as far as I know, I'm the only Jeannie Love, so pretty easy to search. But if you go to my website, so my company is Beyond Coaching. If you go to my website, beyondcoaching.pro, you can sign up for a newsletter that comes out weekly. You can find all the links to my YouTube, Instagram, all the things about me and my work and the tools that I build. And so that would probably be the best place to start.
All right, cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you on the next one.